HBO Pictures was essentially a several $100 million a year marketing campaign for the network. HBO's audience was more or less split in two. 22% of our audience were low income heavy users for whom HBO was the primary source of entertainment for the family since going to the movies was too expensive. The rest of our subscribers were high income light users. They were the ones who would look at the monthly bill, go, there's never anything on HBO, and cancel it, not because they couldn't afford it, but because they thought it was a waste of money. We had subscriber churn every month, but as long as more people picked up the service than dropped it, it didn't really matter. So the corporate mandate for the original programming was twofold. We would make urban themed and popcorn movies for our heavy users and highbrow material for our light users. The idea behind the highbrow material, at that time primarily dead white men movies like Truman, was to generate quality noise, meaning break through the publicity clutter to promote the brand by getting nominated for and winning major awards, which in turn would give light users a justification for keeping HBO even if they never watched it. This is Netflix's exact same strategy. You don't pay Netflix month after month for what you actually watch. You pay for what you could watch, what you mean to watch, what you heard was good, and you keep paying even if you don't watch for months on end or don't like what you do watch, because there's always another piece of original programming around the corner that you can watch, that you mean to watch, that you hear is good. All HBO was doing was licensing feature films to broadcast on cable. So the purpose of the highbrow material and the quality noise was the same as any advertising, to attribute value to a product that's indistinguishable from its competitors. Because absent the original programming, what really is the difference between HBO or Showtime or Starz or Hulu or Amazon or Netflix? The cliche of advertising is people buy the bottle, not the beer, meaning they buy the story around the product because the product itself is fungible. I don't want lame ass ShopRite broccoli. I want my broccoli plucked by happy peasants dancing under the watchful eye of a big benevolent green overseer. Similarly, since wealthy people want the best, the story, the packaging of HBO was quality. Even though I've never seen Big Little Lies, I hear it's really good, and I want my feature film showing cable channel to be the one with the most Golden Globes. HBO Pictures at the time was run by Bob Cooper and his lieutenant Richard Walzer. Bob was a pint-sized Canadian tyro whose leadership style was basically Napoleon complex via middle child syndrome, and Richard, though taller, was equally Machiavellian. Bob and Richard were in a typical senior executive studio relationship, meaning they were locked into some kind of Jacobean psychodrama involving cryptic power play, subtle efforts to undermine each other, and make-up sex. As far as I could gather, passing on projects, meaning soliciting material from writers, agents, and producers and then saying no, was a primary part of being an executive. Bob was the final arbiter when it came to buying projects, and I think my ability to weed out the unsellable and only present Bob with material he actually wanted to buy somehow elevated me in Bob's eyes, which in turn cut into whatever Richard was playing out with him. Not that Hollywood is some stranger to displaced authority issues. One need look no further than how bosses are portrayed in TV shows and films to see Hollywood's unresolved, stumpy 13-year-old girl relationship with authority. Bosses are always either bumblers or assholes, and it's the put-upon workaday Electras and Oedipuses of the world who are the real heroes. Complex parental issues unspool over and over in TV and film, like how in every cop movie, the second the FBI gets involved with the locals, it's immediately a turf war. You think you're going to come in here and take over my investigation? Daddy! Competition reality shows are entirely about judgment and elimination, which I think pretty much summarizes the primal teenage experience at the family dinner table. You're being mean to your sister. Go to your room. Judgment and elimination also encapsulate the Hollywood writing process, in which writers and scripts are judged and eliminated in an endless cycle. Perhaps the reason for all this is that writers create these TV shows and films, and no matter where a particular writer falls in the dominance hierarchy, there's always some idiot or asshole with more power telling them what to do. Richard, a boss of the asshole rather than idiot variety, manifested his Hollywood boss cliche on me by cutting me out of meetings, giving away all my projects to other executives, reviewing my expense report through a scanning electron microscope, and making every day at HBO a total and complete hell. My go-to response, in addition to bitching to my coworkers, was to use the lessons I'd learned at my grandmother's knee to laser in on all of Richard's buttons and really give him a good push. I rode the edge of actionable behavior. Like Richard would ask me something and I'd pause just long enough before answering him so he could see my total contempt for him. A trick I'd learned from watching Eric Menendez's Lawyer. I didn't want to be miserable at work, but I didn't know how not to be. And I couldn't figure out how to manage Richard other than by preying on his weaknesses. I mean, isn't that just what you did? But I also knew that the Richards of the world weren't unique, and that if I couldn't figure out a way to conquer this problem now, I just play it out over and over with every boss I had. But neither of the solutions I could see, express my feelings and lose my job or repress them and keep it, felt like a solution. I was trapped. Then one night at dinner with my friend and Pam's boss, Brian, as I was explaining the whole situation to him, the answer just kind of came to me. You know how at the Special Olympics those kids aren't very good runners, but they get a hug at the end of every race? Well, maybe I need to become a hugger for the emotionally handicapped. Brian thought this was a great breakthrough. In order to be an effective button pusher, you need good insight, and that insight could also be used in the service of something else, like a goal. Prior to my breakthrough, when Richard would, for instance, cut me out of a meeting on a project I brought into the company, I'd feel enraged at being excluded and would demonstrate towards him a kind of contemptuous though muted anger to let him know that whatever he was up to, I was on to him. I hear you had a meeting with those producers. Post-breakthrough, when Richard would do the exact same thing, I'd ignore the blow-off and focus on my goal. In order for me to get what I want, this project set up with me as the executive, Richard needs me to make him feel powerful since he doesn't feel that way on his own. I would then offer him a decision to make so he could demonstrate his power to me. I hear you had a meeting with those producers. Do you think it would be a good project for us? Giving Richard what I knew he wanted from me, offering respect, whether I respected him or not, met with stunning success. Not only was I not fired, I was promoted twice. By being a hugger for the emotionally handicapped, feeling one thing on the inside but expressing something externally in the service of a larger goal, I felt I was finally leaving the petulance of my childhood behind and behaving like a real adult.